Welcome to today's explainer. I'm speaking directly to you, the B2B buyer, on behalf of Hardshell Coffee Machine. But hey, this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill presentation. Think of this more like an exclusive, insider briefing on how to safely source espresso machines. If you're gearing up to wire your very first deposit to an overseas manufacturer you've literally never met, well, you need to know exactly what to look for, and more importantly, what to avoid. So let's jump right in.
Because let's be totally honest here. Right before you hit send on that deposit to an overseas manufacturer, the biggest things keeping you awake at night aren't actually about the price. It's those two massive anxieties. Does this factory actually exist? And is batch 2 going to match batch 1? Every single piece of advice we're diving into today is built to answer those exact questions with hard evidence, rather than just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
A lot of the confusion out there usually starts with what we call the Google search gap. If you search for a manufacturer online right now, Page 1 is completely dominated by European or American consumer brands boasting about their heritage. But the actual Chinese OEM factories, the ones literally building a huge share of the world's espresso machines, they barely even show up. Why? Well, a factory building machines for other brands doesn't really need a flashy consumer-facing website. That silence leaves a massive gap, and sneaky trading companies are more than happy to fill it with slick landing pages pretending to be real factories when they don't even own a single production line. You simply can't rely on search results alone. You have to ask the right questions. So here is our 5-step insider's playbook to systematically eliminate your sourcing risks. We'll cover 1. Verifying factory existence. 2. Sample versus mass production. 3. Batch consistency. 4. Material downgrades. And 5. IP protection. All right, starting with number 1, verifying factory existence. Are they a real factory or just a middleman?
Believe it or not, it's actually surprisingly easy to separate the fakes from the real players. The ultimate red flag? You're dealing with a single WhatsApp contact, there's absolutely zero authentic production footage, and you notice suspiciously uniform prices across multiple listings. And if you ask a technical question, they immediately deflect, saying something like, "Oh, let me check with our engineer." No way. The green light, on the other hand, is a manufacturer offering a 30 to 60-minute live video audit on very short notice. At Hardshell, we absolutely welcome you to book a factory tour. A real established factory can fluently discuss boiler assembly, pump sourcing, and line changeover times without missing a single beat.
Moving on to number 2, sample versus mass production, and how to avoid that dreaded mismatch.
You know, the industry's most common heartbreak goes a little something like this. The golden sample they sent you was absolute perfection, but the actual mass production container arrives looking vastly inferior. It's a nightmare. A few years ago, a premium European audio brand came to us looking to add an espresso machine to their lineup. They had visited over 200 factories. Crazy, right? What finally convinced their QA lead to choose us wasn't some slick sales pitch. It was the fact that we genuinely welcomed a live factory audit and even a second recheck a year later. We treated their super tight tolerance requests as a genuine engineering brief. What mattered wasn't just that we passed the audit, it's that we didn't resist being checked in the first place. That transparency is exactly what builds solid, long-term OEM partnerships.
So how do you actually verify this before production runs wild? You have to demand a sealed, signed retention sample. You've got to request a first article inspection report. And honestly, most importantly, ask if they run incoming material inspections, that's IQC, and in-process inspections, PQC, as completely separate steps. If a factory is just relying on one sloppy check at the very end of the line, huge red flag, run away.
Let's look at number 3, batch consistency, or how to avoid the batch-to-batch gamble.
We've all heard the horror stories where the first shipment is flawless, but the second one suddenly develops totally unacceptable leak rates or steam pressure issues. To prevent this, any real manufacturer must be able to articulate its inspection flow in detail. At Hardshell, we use a very specific 5-checkpoint system: supplier quality engineering, incoming quality control, process quality control, quality assurance, and final quality control. Each of these 5 gates has a crystal clear pass or fail rule. Seriously, if a factory cannot walk you through a multi-step checkpoint by checkpoint flow, you need to look elsewhere.
And listen, that system has to leave a solid paper trail. Every single unit needs to carry a traceable serial code linked directly back to its production date, its specific assembly line, and its material batch. Our philosophy at Hardshell is pretty simple. We would way rather show a client a QC log and a serial trace in a matter of minutes than tell them some long, drawn-out story about how careful we are. Proof beats promises every single time.
All right, number 4, material downgrades. This is what we call the silent downgrade.
Those impossibly cheap quotes you get, they often hide a pretty nasty secret. You approve a sample with food-grade seals, but then for the production units, they quietly swap in a generic material to cut costs. Suddenly, you've got plastic smells in your hot water or parts degrading way too early. Vague specs will just say stainless steel or seal. You need written proof demanding specific material grades. Always demand LFGB or equivalent food contact test reports. For instance, at Hardshell, we deliberately use fluorocarbon seals instead of standard rubber and much thicker PTFE tubing in the water path. Why? Because cheaper alternatives just fail under repeated heating and cooling. You absolutely need that level of detail locked down in writing.
And finally, number 5, IP protection. Let's talk about protecting your hard work and design. If a manufacturer ever hesitates or just brushes off the need to sign an NDA before getting your proprietary design files, that is a massive warning sign. A factory that's actually serious about a long-term partnership will have a standard NDA ready to go before you even have to ask. Also, ask what proprietary technology the factory has developed themselves. At Hardshell, for example, we hold an industry-first patent on a dual boiler system that gives home machines real commercial-grade steam, plus a patent on an automatic milk frothing system. Why does that matter to you? Well, a factory that invests in its own R&D has way more incentive to respect and protect your original IP than a factory that just copies and resells other people's engineering. Okay, bringing this all together, we've put together an ultimate vetting checklist for you. It outlines exactly what to ask and what the perfect answer should look like before a single dollar changes hands. Wondering if a factory exists? Ask for a video audit. A green light is them offering it immediately. Worried about a sample mismatch? Ask for sealed retention and a first article inspection. A green light means separate incoming and in-process QC steps. For batch consistency, ask for QC docs and traceability. You want a named multi-checkpoint system. For materials, demand written specs and test reports. And for IP, always ask for that signed NDA right up front. Definitely keep this checklist handy.
Now, we do often get a few frequent questions about the financials and logistics, so let's just clear those up. Yes, pre-production deposits are completely standard in this industry, but hear me on this. Only after the factory clears the vetting checks we just discussed. And what about minimum order quantities, or MOQs? Typical MOQs sit between 500 and 1,000 units, but true partners are flexible. For higher value models, if a buyer shows real potential, a factory like ours can flex that down to 200 units, rather than forcing a rigid minimum on your very first order.
Ultimately, vetting a manufacturer shouldn't feel like a giant leap of faith. A factory genuinely equipped to build your espresso machines won't even flinch at being scrutinized. So I'll leave you with this somewhat provocative question. Is your current or potential manufacturer truly ready to be checked? We openly invite you to put Hardshell to the test. Request that live video tour, ask for the QC logs, and apply this exact vetting standard to your own supply chain. It costs you absolutely nothing but a little time to find out exactly who you are really going into business with. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy sourcing.